the sexual abuse happened, I was 12 years old by a family. The depression, the PTSD, everything that had happened to our family led me to become a very staunch mental health advocate at one point. In fact, that I feel like that became my identity. I said Jesus was the last option because to me, Jesus was not cool, right? So all of those things, crystals, horoscope, Reiki, yoga, they brought relief. Pero it never lasted. I would always find myself back to zero. My father was first an actor turned politician. My mom was an actress. So they were both public figures at one point, and my dad was in the public service industry for 50 years. And at one point he held the highest position in the country. So that was normal for me to not see them all the time, and plus my dad's life is an open book.
Yeah.
I did not grow up with the traditional setup. I have like 15 half siblings from my dad.
Wow.
That we know of.
Oh.
If there's someone out there who still thinks that they're my dad's child, just let us know. But so far 15 kami. So it was a very complicated setup for a child to figure out.
Yeah.
So at a very young age, I felt very insecure. Kasi the moment you realize that, bakit ganon? Like, iba yung family ko sa family ng cousin ko or sa family ng classmates ko. So that then started that touch of insecurity and a very fragile self-identity. Yeah, so medyo shaky. But I mean, I had a relatively happy childhood, but you reach a point when you start asking questions.
Yeah.
And I think when I started to try to figure out who am I, why is my family different from the rest, that's when my perception of myself started to become shaky. Because I went through so much growing up, being the sexual abuse, the depression, the PTSD, everything that had happened to our family led me to become a very staunch mental health advocate at one point. In fact, that I feel like that became my identity for for a certain period of time, But at some point, I'm a perennial seeker of truth. Let's put it that way. So I always search, I always seek. And where I'm at right now in my journey of seeking the truth, this is where it led me to biblical counseling and being a Christian life coach. Because based on my experience, I don't want to generalize it, based on my personal journey, my personal growth, this is what worked. And this is what I believe was true for me.
So, what do you think was missing in all your years of advocacy work? How many years again were you advocating for mental health?
I think from 2013 to around about 2017, 2018. I think it was the same because I was in therapy for 2 years after I tried to take my life twice. So the second time I failed to commit suicide, that's when I started to seek help from a professional. And it was also around that time that I renewed my faith in Christ. But as I was sharing kanina with Joss, Jesus is always the last option.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I know I digress, but I just need to put it in context. Like, ano bang kulang sa mental health, right? So I went into therapy for 2 years, and it was secular therapy, CBT, I was on antidepressant, anti-anxiety, I was on sleeping pills, I was on therapy almost every day for 2 years. But then it started to feel very draining because all we spoke about is, so how do you feel? So kamusta ka na? How does that make you feel? And you always go back to the past.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's like digging deep.
Digging deeper, because secular psychology is you have to dig your past so that you can fix your future. Something like that, diba? That's what Freud, sila Jung subscribed to. And I guess after 2 years of that, I got really drained. And that then translated to my mental health advocacy. After a certain amount of years that I was fighting for mental health and really standing for it, I guess the biggest part of that journey was when we passed the mental health law in 2016. And I was part of the technical working group with Senator Rizal Tiveros. For me, that was okay. You know, everyone acknowledges our dark past, everyone acknowledges our struggles and whatnot. So when that happened, the next question was, okay, so what's next?
Yeah.
And I guess I got stuck there for quite some time.
So while you were doing advocacy work, would you say that you were speaking from a place of healing already or not yet?
I think the advocacy work was part of it.
Yeah.
Because then I was able to focus on something outside of myself, as opposed to
Like
therapy.
you were channeling
As
the
opposed
pain
to
into something.
as opposed to therapy where you're focused only on yourself, your past, and your healing. So advocacy gave me a channel to focus something outside of myself. So yes, advocacy work became part of my healing, but I love your question. Was I operating from a space of healing? I don't think so.
So back then, were you already a Christian? Or
I was
not?
a baby Christian.
Baby
I was.
Christian,
I
yeah.
renewed my faith 2013 when I started therapy. But like what I said, Jesus was the last option, because to me, Jesus was not cool.
Yeah.
You know, growing up, parang, but do a Christian. Like, they don't do things. They're so boring. Like, you know, and I've heard it all before. So I was very into Carl Jung, archetypes. I was into yoga, Reiki, a lot of new age, because at some point they worked.
Yeah.
It really worked. It's just that it didn't last.
Yeah.
They gave me relief. And I think if you are healing from something, any relief and anything that feels good, you will try it.
Yeah.
Because you want relief from the pain, right? So all of those things, crystals, horoscope, Reiki, yoga, they brought relief. Pero it never lasted. I would always find myself back to zero.
So what were you seeking relief from? So you mentioned the suicide attempt.
Yes.
So was it mainly the sexual abuse, or can we delve deeper into that?
The sexual abuse happened. I was 12 years old by a family member, and then after that, it was never addressed cultural reasons.
Yeah.
Because it's shameful, and plus my parents were public figures at that time, so it was easier to just sweep it under the rug and hope that I turn out okay, but I did not. So I was 12 years old, and then the whole thing with my dad happened when he was impeached. 2001, I was 16 years old, so I was
4 years.
extremely bullied naman in school.
Yeah.
To the point where I had to leave the country. So I had a lot of unresolved issues, the sexual abuse, the extreme bullying, and not just in school, but it felt as if like the whole country was against us. And plus, spiritually, I was bankrupt, because I remember at that time, Catholic naman kami, we went to Mass, and this priest said, kung tunay kang Kristiyano, magmarcha ka sa EDSA 2, like against ERAP, diba?
Yes.
So I was 16, super fragile, and then at that point in time, it felt like not only did my friends abandon us, the whole country abandoned us, but God. So at that point, at 16 years old, I made an internal vow that I will never have anything to do with Christians. Hate God, because clearly He abandoned us also. So I was a godless person for the chunk of my early adult life.
So when you were godless, what did you turn to
Oh my
cope
gosh,
with
anything
the hurt?
that felt good.
Yeah, because
Anything
I
that-
can relate to that.
anything-
Anything that
Hindi
could
lang
make me
anything.
numb the pain.
Yeah, not just anything.
Yeah.
Everybody, anybody, whether it's friends,
Yeah.
men, and allergic ako sa mga healthy,
Healthy
like
men.
grounded people. I was
Yeah.
so allergic to them because they did not make sense to me.
Because you
So
were so
I was
used
so
to
broken.
the chaos.
I attracted
Broken
everyone
people
who was
as
broken,
well.
and we would just stay in that brokenness, and try to lick each other's wounds and try to, diba? And then you search for the next high, literally and figuratively. So that was my life for about 10 years because I had unresolved issues with sexual abuse, with the bullying, and all that stuff, diba? So that was my life for 10 years.
Actually, what we do here at PAVE is very countercultural.
Yeah.
So when we have our survivor events, I actually brief them on the realities because then when the survivors are all together, they kind of get to see the common denominator and they see it in each other because, I mean, in my point of view, after talking to all these survivors, there's one or two things that happen when you're raped or when you're physically or sexually abused. It's one, you become hypersexual, or
Yeah.
two, you become afraid of
Yeah,
men.
one or two. Very almost
Yeah.
polar. It's either one or the
Yeah.
other, walang middle ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess since we've tackled that, maybe we can go into more about the healing. And right now, today, you would say that you're completely and absolutely healed.
I would say yes. In Christ, yes.
Yeah.
Because there's wholeness in Him. Now, do I still struggle with, some memories? Of course I do.
Yeah.
But, I choose to believe that His Word is superior over my past. You know what I mean? And I think that's why Christianity worked for me. Because it was less about what happened to me, but more about what He is defining me who to be. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. If you are in Christ, you're a new person. The old is gone, a new life has begun. These are the things that, when you subscribe to it and when you believe it, it gives you that firm foundation. No. This is what the Bible say. I am no longer who I was. I am no longer defined by what happened to me. So parang I finally found a baseline to go back to all the time.
Yeah.
Especially when do I still get anxious thoughts? Absolutely. Do I still get depressed? 100%. It's just that I have scriptures
Yeah.
to really, shift my focus.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned the word subscribe because that means you have to go back to it every day and daily work on it. So
Yeah.
what are the methods that to
Well,
keep your faith going?
it's very different for everyone. I think first things first, as a Christian, it's really your belief in Jesus, the relationship that you build
Yeah.
with Jesus first. If you believe in Him, then believing scriptures will be second nature to you. So do not be anxious, but instead pray
Yeah.
and be grateful. So if I have anxious thoughts, I pray and I surrender.
Yeah.
The thing kasi there is, it's hard to trust and surrender someone you don't know.
That's true.
So for
you
me,
start with
the
getting to know
journey
Him.
for me to trust God is to get to know Him first. Because I cannot trust that He is in control if I don't know Him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So my belief is then now anchored on how much I know this God that I claim to serve.
Yeah, so I get this question a lot in the comments, especially with my testimony videos. So when bad things happen, when women get raped, when babies have cancer, and like you mentioned, you went through all that turmoil in life and you're just like, so where is this God? So what would you advise a survivor that thinks the exact same as you did when you were younger? Like, where is this God with everything going on right now?
This is such a complex question.
Yeah.
I'm trying to not be so theologically. I know here how. Okay. I know, first of all, right now in my walk with God, that He is good. So that's number one. Okay, because I know He's good, but then bad things still happen even to good people and innocent women like us.
Yeah.
Did I deserve that? No. Diba? But if you believe and subscribe to Christian perspective in what happened to the world, we are a broken world. The moment Eve took a hold of that fruit, they always say it's an apple, but it's fruit. But the moment she took a hold of that, sin entered the world, right? And it's so easy for us to say, then bakit siya pinayagan ni God? If God is, God is this, God is that, di sana, di na lang niya pinayagan. But then again, God also gave us free will.
Yeah.
To choose. And when Eve chose against His will, diba, He cannot force us into doing something that we don't want. Diba? So, all that to say, why do bad things happen to good people? I think it's because we have turned away from God. The person who, there's this verse in Genesis chapter 50, verse 20. It says, what the enemy did to me, what the enemy wanted to do to me, God meant it for good. Diba? That's with Joseph, diba? What the enemy did to harm me, God meant it for good, so that I will be in a position to save many people's lives. So now as a rape survivor, I can now use that pain to minister to other women.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yes, it's hard to understand why bad things happen, but then you ask people, these people who do these bad things, do they even believe in God?
Yeah.
Do they even believe in Jesus? Jesus is a radical person. He said, love your enemies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
it was an upside down.
it's an upside down thing. So I don't think if this person believes in Jesus, I don't think this person would do anything wrong or bad. Diba? But we tend to always blame God for all our wrong choices. Diba? So, and yes, God had to allow pain into this world, because without pain, we will not know what love is.
Yeah. And the survivors are sick of hearing this from me, but I would always say that the key Christian concepts for me to heal from abuse, and not only abuse in general, are identity in Christ and forgiveness. And as you mentioned, you have to subscribe. So how did you heal your identity? And how did you find your identity in Christ?
Like I said, it's really the reason why Christianity worked for me is because it was less about me already. If the problem is self, right? Self cannot be the answer. It has to be someone outside of you.
Yeah.
Kasi self is the problem, self cannot be the answer. So my healing started when I started to see how God sees me.
That is so good. I got goosebumps.
Okay.
But now it makes sense, because that's what happened exactly to me as well. I feel like I got over it without knowing how exactly I got over it, because I was going to youth church and it was always the topics. The topics are always identity and Christ. So when you focus more on God.
When I focus more on, when my identity is in Christ, this means that my identity is not anchored on, number one, being a woman, how I look, how much I weigh, how much I make money, how many children I don't, that does not define me. What defines me is my faith in Christ alone.
Yeah, the rape doesn't define
you.
Your parents don't define
My parents don't define me. My children don't define me. All of these things around me, it does not define me.
Yeah.
It is my faith, and that's where that's when I experience real freedom. Who the Son sets free is free indeed. Yes. When I anchored my identity in Christ, none of these things mattered anymore. my weight, my appearance, my lifestyle. That's nothing. It does not it does not have anything to do with me. Neither does my past.
Yeah.
It is my faith now that defines who I am in Christ. And for me, that was such a freeing moment
Yeah.
to finally grasp that kind of freedom that I have in Him.
So, just a last few questions.
Sure.
What advice would you give to a survivor that's struggling to forgive their rapist or their abuser?
Don't rush it. Don't. We tend to not want to feel pain, and I think that's one of the problems we have as a culture and in our generation. Even in secular therapy, I feel like that's where we go wrong because we don't want to feel pain. We always want to be happy. We always want to feel good.
Yeah.
Parang that's why nga may antidepressant, anti-this, anti-that. We never want to feel pain. But some pain are necessary. Believe it or not, some of the most profound lessons I've learned and realizations I've ever had were during my darkest times, my darkest moments. In Ecclesiastes, it said, Ecclesiastes 7-5, it's better to go to a funeral than a party. We all must die, so everyone must think about this. Sorrow is better than laughter because sadness has a good influence in your heart, meaning it is in your darkest moments that you really have a great understanding of life. So when it comes to forgiveness, especially to your perpetrators, do not rush it, but you must choose it. Forgiveness, just like love, is not about how you feel. It's a proactive choice that you do until your feelings follow. Forgiveness is really very hard to understand if you don't know forgiveness in Christ's perspective. You know,
Yeah.
how He has forgiven, how I've received His forgiveness in my life, because I'm also not perfect.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So when I had to also understand that perspective from Christ, you know, in order for me to understand and to allow myself this process of forgiving my perpetrator. Have I seen my perpetrator? Yes, just a couple of years ago. And I never thought that that day would come. And when I saw him face to face, I didn't feel anything. I didn't, because I allowed the process to happen. But I just did not allow it. I was proactively forgiving him through it all. So I think it's a choice. It's a choice for someone to remain, like to dwell on the pain.
Yeah.
But it's also a choice to fight for the kind of life that you want to have.
Yeah.
You know, so forgiveness it's like holding on to unforgiveness is like drinking poison, hoping for the other person to die.
That's so true. And I
You
say
know,
that a lot.
so if I wanted to move on,
Yeah.
I needed to
Yeah.
be proactive in choosing to forgive this person. Another thing that I've learned, everything in life is hard.
Yeah.
Diba, I was telling you this, Phoebes, when we
Yeah.
had coffee. Phoebes, everything is hard. It's hard to dwell on unforgiveness, and it's so hard to forgive.
That's true.
So you just gotta choose which heart you want to
Yeah.
deal with.
Will you choose the heart that's gonna set you free?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because if you choose unforgiveness, that's also hard, man.
That's true.
Because you're gonna live a life of bitterness, of pain, and this is what you're gonna pour out on other people.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is hard, especially towards someone, especially if you didn't deserve what happened to you.
Yeah. Of course.
I remember you asked me if I wanted to, if I wanted to seek justice.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
Because when that time happened, my dad was in the position to do anything.
To anyone.
But now, when I think about it, I would choose wholeness and healing over justice.
Was it your decision not to do anything?
No,
Or your
because I was
family?
very
'Cause-
young. I was 12.
Yeah.
So it just naturally happened that way. But in hindsight, I'm happy that it happened that way.
And I was your family member. How old was that family member?
He's 4 years older.
4 years older.
Yeah.
So did your decision get affected by your aunts? Because it was your cousin, aunt,
Decision to do
uncle,
what?
to not do anything.
Yeah,
about
because
it.
I was a child.
Yeah.
I was a child, but I did not understand that. So growing up, kaya nga, it's such a complicated, it was just too complicated for my 12-year-old mind to understand.
Yeah, but you told your parents, and what was
My
their
mom-
reaction?
yeah,
with
of course, it was such a huge shock.
Yeah.
You know, but I think you will never be ready for that.
That's
And I know that they tried to handle ito rin, it's something that I had to come to terms with and accept that my parents did try their best at that point in time. And I had to forgive them for that
Yeah.
also.
Yeah.
And I had to accept that and choose to love them.
I applied that with my mother. I applied that
Hi,
with her.
Mom.
Hi, mom. But yeah.
Yeah, you
so,
choose.
yeah.
Diba?
She really did do her best. So
You have
you
to-
also forgive your parents and your
Exactly.
family members.
Because we all look, I'm a mom now also.
Yeah.
So as a daughter, I had such high expectations towards my mom and my dad. And they failed me. And I was
Yeah.
so angry. But I also failed them as a daughter.
That's
I was the worst daughter at one point in my life. And I know I'm also going to fail my kids. But then this is, again, why Christianity works for me, because now I know that I'm not operating alone. I'm operating through God's grace. So this then relieves me from the pressure of wanting to be perfect and, you know, parang I don't really expect my parents to be this certain, you know, parents that I have in my mind that I deserve, because I too was not, you know, the daughter that they deserve.
Yeah.
Diba?
That is so good.
Yeah.
So I guess now, since we've already covered the past, how about we cover the future? What's next for Christian life coach Jerika Ejercito?
You know what? I've reached an age where I just rely on God's leading. At the moment, I just want to be faithful in the little things. I have 5 little kids that, you know, has been entrusted under my care. So, of course, yun muna. I gotta be mom first. I gotta be wife first. And I'm just grateful to be able to do, you know, little things like this on the side. And I'm just, you know, hoping that I'll be able to continue with my studies and, you know, see where the Lord takes me.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
so great. Thank you so much for being here today. I guess my very last question
Okay.
is, how can people follow you and how can people support your work?
Oh, well, I'm just on Instagram. I'm such a tita. That's all I have.
At least you have Instagram.
I don't have TikTok.
We'll
I
pop
don't-
the username here.
Yeah, Jerika Ejercito, super simple. Follow me, and yeah, you'll just see everything from there.
All right. Thank you so much, Ate Ika.
Thank you.